Political posters pop up all across Egypt. The country is set to start voting Tuesday in a referendum on a new constitution. This new document would replace the one signed by ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. Many have predicted a yes vote, giving the army-backed government support for its overthrow of Morsi. At a meeting in the Ministry of Health's National Training Institute, Constituent Assembly head Amir Musa described the constitution as a reflection of Egypt's current situation.
This constitution is a reflection of Egypt's current situation, along with the challenges Egypt and the Egyptian society face. Therefore, there is a great focus on freedoms, rights and the benefits of the Egyptian people, without neglecting any segment of society.
The new text will likely give a final push to a presidential bid by the man who deposed Morsi, Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. While most of the Cairo billboards support the referendum, some political groups are boycotting the event.
We can never participate and give legitimacy to a regime which fools the people and tries to act like it's a civil democratic regime. It is neither democratic nor civil.
The Interior Ministry will deploy 220,000 policemen and 500 combat units to oversee security during the referendum.
Now for the latest on Egypt's third constitutional referendum, we're joined in studio by Na'eem Jeenah, the Executive Director of Afro-Middle East Centre. Na'eem, thank you so much for your time and welcome to AM News. Na'eem, Egyptians are voting in the constitutional referendum for the third time since the ouster of Mubarak. What is the latest referendum for?
Well, I mean, on the 3rd of July, you had the coup where President Morsi, who was the first democratically elected president of Egypt, was overthrown by the military. The military put in its own government, interim government, into place, which has been ruling all this time. And now the military set up a committee to draw up a new constitution. So they had the constitution last year, which was passed by a referendum. They're drawing up a new constitution. They have drawn up a new constitution, which entrenches the role of the military and the power of the military in Egyptian society. And people are going to vote on that today.
Do you think that's going to work, though, or resolve the issues there, Na'eem?
Not at all. I mean, firstly, the constitution seeks to entrench the military rule over Egypt and take Egypt back to where it was before the uprisings of 2011. Secondly, what we're going to see is that all the opposition groups have been calling for a boycott of the referendum. So you're going to have a small percentage of Egyptians who will vote, and they will announce that they were 95% or whatever that voted yes for the constitution. I mean, those who are opposing the constitution have not even been allowed to campaign. So there are huge billboards all over Cairo saying vote yes. But people that have put up pamphlets saying vote no have been arrested and are in detention at the moment. Wow. So all the opposition groups are saying no, and are not saying to people vote no, they're saying boycott it. So only a small proportion will vote. And as you said in your introduction, in the past 2 years, Egyptians will go to the polls now for the 6th time. So they've had parliamentary elections, they had two presidential elections, 2 rounds, constitutional referendum and now constitutional referendum. The other 5 were all won by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood now is banned and has been declared a terrorist organization. So the main opposition, in a sense, to military rule is now banned. Is now defunct.
Now, Na'eem, what is the current leadership hoping to achieve with this referendum?
Well, what they're hoping to do is really to fool Egyptians and to fool the world that they're actually moving on a democratic path.
When you mean fool the world, please clarify for us, Na'eem.
Because everyone knows, the rest of the world knows that the 3rd of July was a military coup.
True.
They've been saying, no, this is not a military coup, it's a revolution, etc. And in fact, we're going to correct the democratic process. So they're going to have the referendum today, which they'll get 92 or 95% of the people voting yes. Whether they do vote yes or not is not the issue. That's what the results will be. Everyone knows. Then in a few months' time, probably by the middle of the year, you'll have presidential elections. And the head of the military, General al-Sisi, is he's saying now that if the people want him to, he'll stand for elections. We know what that means. So he'll get elected president in June, July. And then by the end of the year or early next year, they'll have parliamentary elections. The main opposition groups have been banned. So the only people that will fill the parliamentary seats will be those who are loyal to the military. So by next year, they will say, look, we had a constitutional referendum, we had presidential and parliamentary elections. Egypt is now back to being a democratic state, while in the meantime, the military is ruling the country.
But Na'eem, that's the whole circle that happened with the election of President Morsi. It's now going to just be rotating all over again. What does this mean for the Egyptians in Egypt?
Well, exactly. It's a rotation back to 2010, back to before the uprisings. What it means for Egyptians is that things have gone backwards, and in many senses, things are worse now than they were in 2010 under Mubarak. The repression, the lack of freedom of expression, the closing down of TV channels and newspapers, etc., is worse than it was in 2010 under Mubarak. So Egypt's gone backwards. The military has firmly taken control, and they're going to make sure that that this nasty thing called democracy doesn't rear its head again.
Na'eem, what sort of intervention, in your view, needs to be actually taken up in this case?
Well, I think that that countries that really support democracy and the democratic process, and particularly on the African continent, should intervene, should maintain. At least the African Union had declared what happened on the 3rd of July a coup, said this is not a legitimate government. That position should be maintained by the AU, by countries like South Africa, and all other countries on the African continent, as well as countries beyond the African continent. My fear is that many countries, the United States, for example, is now saying things like, well, you know, Egypt is now back on the democratic path, etc. And that's going to be just a betrayal of the Egyptian people and of the past 3 years of their attempts to claim democracy for themselves.
Now, we also understand a bomb exploded near a court complex in the Gaza district of Imbaba. This must be quite worrying.
Well, there have been a few explosions, bombings that have taken place, etc., over the past couple of months. It certainly is worrying, but you know, those people who felt that they could support, and there were many, who felt that they could support a military coup on the 3rd of July, and that military coup will not be followed by repression of the military, by the military, and will not be followed by retaliation by various sectors of society, were wrong. Because if you have a military coup, the only way to maintain that coup is to repress the population, which is what has happened. And when you repress the population in that kind of way, then people will respond, and maybe not in the best possible way. So this bomb, the previous bombings that have taken place by sometimes obscure groups that you have never heard of before, yes. I mean, I think these are what is going to characterize Egypt now, unless true democracy returns, and it doesn't seem like it's going to in the near future.
Anytime soon. Thank you so much, Na'eem, for that insight. That was Na'eem Jeenah, who is from Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East.